Donald Trump. Good news, he's the man for the job. Bad news, it's too late.
I've been all over, and I've met some of the greatest people I'll ever meet within these communities, and they are very, very upset with what their politicians have told them and what their politicians have done.
We certainly don't have now. We have the phony unemployment rate of 5% when the number's probably into the 20s.
Senator Clinton, this is the same person who has taken more money from lobbyists than any other candidate, Democratic or Republican, taking more money from drug company lobbyists and insurance company lobbyists.
All my taxes are going down. Big league for the middle class, big league for business. And I think ultimately everyone's going to do better because our businesses are going to generate a lot more money. We're going to really have a vital economy again.
I'm telling you right now, we're going to write fairer rules for the middle class, and we are going to raise taxes on the middle class.
Senator Warren.
Senator Warren, you guys have got to try the cold chocolate.
Weapons and dollars enter Mexico illegally from the north that strengthen drug cartels and other criminal organizations that generate danger in Mexico.
Toward achieving this shared objective, and it will be shared, of safety for all citizens is paramount to both the United States and to Mexico.
And the Donald Trump perhaps that you see is the real guy. He doesn't act. Politicians get up there and act.
Well, I don't know why that's funny. I mean, did you have any in-person briefings? I don't find it funny at all. Well, I mean, the reason I say it's not funny is because it went well into the night when our folks on the ground were still in danger. So I don't think it's funny to ask you if you were alone the whole night.
I think people are reacting to his brazen, unapologetic, you know, just sort of unedited, it's Donald Trump talking. There's nobody sitting there and writing his speech.
So, look, here's the story. Here's the story. I think, and I've been dealing with the press a long time, I think the political press is among the most dishonest people that I've ever met. I have to tell you that, okay? Of course, you're excluded, Cole.
And, you know, you can hate the guy, but you don't think for a second that there's a guy sitting there, here's what you should say, Donald. Yeah. He's his own man. He doesn't care what Privacy or anybody else has to say. He's saying, look, this is what I believe in.
More than 110,000 people at his rallies, while Clinton has accumulated only a little more than 10,000.
The enemy will say, what shall we do now? This man knows all our tricks and schemes. We have been robbing America for decades. What shall we do to stop this?
I'll tell you honestly, I'm not running against crooked Hillary. I'm running against the crooked media. That's what I'm running against.
So we go from the highest tax in the world to being one of the lowest tax. We're actually third lowest, and at the 15%. People now are going to bring their money back, and they're going to bring it back automatically, just.
To date, as of Clinton's 11 events, 5 have been held in high school gyms, which she can't even fill.
The Spirit says, ha, no one shall stop this that I have started. For the enemy has stolen from America for decades, and it stops now.
You in the center, why don't you turn your camera? Show them how many people come to these rallies. Turn them. Go ahead, turn them. Go ahead.
Even Barack Obama himself, the first time she ran, couldn't believe that it was real. Let me have him tell it.
This is the same person who took money from financial folks on Wall Street and then voted for a bankruptcy bill that makes it harder for folks right here.
You've said, though, that if you did run for president, you believe you'd win.
Well, I don't know. I think I'd win. I tell you what, I wouldn't go in to lose. I've never gone in to lose in my life.
The Spirit of God says, I have chosen this man, Donald Trump, for I will use this man to bring honor, respect, and restoration to America. America will be respected once again as the most powerful and prosperous nation on earth. The dollar will be the strongest it has ever been in history of the United States and will once again be the currency by which all others are judged.
greatest problem the world has is nuclear armament, nuclear weapons. Not global warming like you think and your president thinks. We have no leadership, and honestly, that starts with Secretary Clinton.
All right, you have 2 minutes on the same question to defend tax increases.
We have the worst revival of an economy since the Great Depression. And believe me, we're in a bubble right now. And the only thing that looks good is the stock market. But if you raise interest rates even a little bit, that's going to come crashing down. We are in a big, fat, ugly bubble. And we better be awfully careful. And we have a Fed that's doing political things. This Janet Yellen of the Fed. The Fed is doing political by keeping the interest rates at this level. When they raise interest rates, you're going to see some very bad things happen because the Fed is not doing their job. The Fed is being more political than Secretary Clinton.
Love him or hate him, there's one thing nobody can deny. Donald Trump knows a lot about the U.S. economy. He's part of the 1% running this country and has built a multi-billion-dollar fortune. So is the Republican frontrunner full of hot air again? Or is this a slip of the tongue from somebody who knows more than he's willing to share with the rest of us? The answer to this question will shock even hardcore liberals. In my research, I have uncovered a strange pattern that has been going on for the past 20 years. A bizarre economic cycle intimately linked to every U.S. election since then. Right now, I will show you the hard facts that led me to this conclusion in plain and simple English, so that by the end of this video, you can make your own choice and be better prepared for what's to come. But to understand how this bizarre pattern works, we need to take a short look back at 1999.
When the ball drops on the year 2000, it will be a momentous event for the world and for the U.S. economy, which is closing in on its longest expansion ever. The decade has been marked by strong growth, the lowest unemployment in a generation, and yet remarkably little inflation.
It seemed like a totally different America than the one we are living in today. The stock market was booming thanks to the internet companies, affectionately called the dot-coms. For many Americans, investing in the internet companies seemed like the quickest way to become rich. More and more people put their savings into the stock market, driving it higher and higher. They gambled their money on the hope that they could sell those stocks for 2 to 3 times their value. And everybody was praising the Clinton administration for creating the biggest economic growth in U.S. history. For a time, it worked. To many, it seemed like the party would never end. Even the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Alan Greenspan, said, "Technology is creating a new economy, one where the old rules no longer applied." The Fed was so confident that in February 2000, it began raising the interest rates to their highest level since 1995. At the same time, bad economic data started to come in. The previous holiday season that was supposed to bring big profits to internet-based companies was a major disappointment. And it was not just online shopping. Ordinary Americans bought less and consumption was dropping. While the nation was preparing for the next election, the house of cards built around the stock market started to collapse. On the 12th of April, 2000, the NASDAQ dropped by 386 points. It was the largest drop ever recorded, and by the end of the next week, Wall Street had lost almost a quarter of its value. The long economic boom of the late 90s became a gigantic bust. Bush was entering office at a time when the NASDAQ had lost 60% of its value, erasing $7 trillion of American wealth. Clinton's economy grew on the back of the dot-com bubble, and now everybody was looking to Bush to get the economy going again. But before going any further, let's take a short step back and see what we can learn from this. An economic bubble grows around an asset that becomes very attractive to investors. In the 90s, this asset was the internet company stock. Greed attracts more and more people who gamble their money, hoping that prices will go up and they will sell for a profit later. When people are blinded by the bubble, they think that growth will never end. This delusion is fueled by the media, economic experts, and even the Fed. At this point, something very interesting happened. As the economy showed signs of slowing down, the Fed raised the interest rate. And, curiously, some months before the next U.S. election, the bubble bursts, creating massive economic pain. We now have a theory that we can put to the test. A bubble emerges and grows on low interest rates. Investors and speculators are down in, as the experts say. Everything is fine and growth will continue. The Fed raises interest rates in a time where the economy begins to slow down. And that specific time is right before the next presidential election. The bubble bursts, and the next president has to deal with the aftermath. The bubble to end all bubbles, because of its sheer size. It's inflated to a size far greater than the dot-com bubble and the mortgage CDO bubble combined. This is the final piece of the puzzle. The Fed interest rate hike, the experts claiming everything is okay, the real economy slowing down, and the bubble that is inflated to an unsustainable size. If history repeats itself, 2016 will be the year big banks come crashing down, and the Fed and our government are totally powerless to stop them. Their safety net is made out of straws. It took extraordinary efforts to prop up the big banks in 2008. During Obama's presidency, the U.S. debt doubled, reaching almost $19 trillion. Yet the economy grew at a modest pace of 2% per year. Compare that to the doubling of the derivatives market, and you begin to realize the level of economic pain we are about to feel. This will make the Great Depression of the 30s and the Great Recession of 2008 feel like a picnic. So what would a crash look like? You need only to picture what happened in Greece to get an idea. The first thing that happened is that all the banks closed. The only way people could get their money out was with ATM withdrawals. And they were limited to 60 euros a day. That's about $63. Ask yourself this. If the banks close in the U.S., could you live with $63 per day? Immediately, huge lines formed in front of ATMs. People waited in the scorching heat for hours to get a tiny fraction of their savings and deposits out. 17% of the Greek population is currently unable to meet their daily needs for food. Approximately 30% are living below the poverty line. The official unemployment rate is 27%, 52% of under 25s. In Athens, Greece's capital, one of these is 53-year-old Athenian Vasilis Dimopoulos, who used to earn up to 3,000 euros per month until his employer folded in 2008. I sold my home in 2007, though the small profit I made is now gone. I was on the streets for 6 months, he said. Now, Dimopoulos lives in a Red Cross hostel selling Athens street paper, Shadia. Dionysia Michalidou, retiree. I have no insurance. I have no pension. I have nothing. Since the crisis, suicides have increased by roughly 50%. Emmy Christoulis, daughter of suicide victim. If one Greek was to take up a Kalashnikov, I would be the second. I find no other solution than that of a dignified exit before I begin searching through the garbage for my food. I believe that one day, because the younger generation has no future, they will take up arms and hang the traitors of the nation. Keep in mind that Greece received bailouts in 2015, and yet this is the situation there. Who will be able to bail out the world's largest economy? No one. The crisis brought by the collapse of the too-big-to-fail banks will be global, and it will dwarf anything the world has ever seen. Personally, I expect that everything that happened in Greece will happen in the U.S., but on a much greater scale, and the impacts will be far worse. I have studied economics for the past 35 years. I have seen it go through good times, and I have studied the bad ones. I went through the numbers over and over again, thinking this is not real, thinking I had made a mistake somewhere. But many other economic experts say the same thing. The same experts who warned us about the crisis coming in 2008 are all sounding the alarm bells. Peter Schiff, Gerald Celente, Mark Faber, and many others are predicting a disaster for 2016. To be completely honest with you,